Title of this webinar is Continuing the Conversation, Leading with Empathy and Equity to Reduce Digital Inequality. I have two subcategories in my mind. Number one is empathy. Number two is equity. And digital inequity comes within the category of digital and non-digital, so we'll come to that later on. The first idea is talking about empathy and equity in relation to the book that I have just published, and it is the Handbook of Research on Libraries, Archives, Museums, and in terms of social justice and civic engagement. The idea of empathy leading to equity, equity leading to justice is, I think, best described by Karen Armstrong in her Charter of Compassion. This charter is based on the golden rule where people have to respect each other. And in terms of social justice and civic engagement, the two words that are in red are the number one is the responsibility. The second is the care. This is what I can understand as the responsibility of the other in the society, that I can think of and imagine and wonder and do something for those in my neighborhood, wherever they are. And care is a kind of issue that comes up in any crisis, including COVID, where people have to be thinking about the others, not just myself in isolation, but even about others, and more about this as we move on from this slide. This slide here is about human relations, and it is best described by a librarian from Egypt. The librarian is the head of a library that was called the Alexandria Library. Now it is called Bibliotheca Alexandria. And he gives the credo of a librarian. What is empathy to do with the librarian? What is equity to do with the librarian? His statement is so comprehensive. For example, I read only the first two sentences. It says, the world is my home, humanity is my family, violence, non-violence is my creed, peace, justice, equality for all is my purpose. This is how a librarian can relate to the society, a librarian or archivist or a museologist, in this sense, that our job is not for ourselves, not provide information for the people who are available and accessible, but also think of those who are not able to access, rather the have-nots. That is the relationship between empathy, equity, and the profession of library, archivists, museologists, and people who deal with information services. When I think of myself, of what I am is not important according to me. And rather than that, what is important to me is who I am. The 25 pictures that you see here are the people who have been for my good and for my success responsible. They are not responsible for my failures, but they are the leaders on the profession in India, in Pakistan, in US, in UK, wherever they are. These are the leaders whom I think they are my mentors, and their inspiration is what makes me stand today where I am. And for me, this is the part of idea that empathy is born at home. It is not migrated, it is not imported, it is not even possible to pick up empathy suddenly. You need to have that kind of long-lasting impression and impact on your heart, on your feelings, on your attitudes, to think about others. And they thought of me, whether they knew me or not, whether they were familiar with me or not. They didn't know me if they are in US. Like, for example, William Cantwell Smith, professor of religious studies in McGill, never met me. He was on his bed in the last days in 1989 when I wrote to him. And he said, you carry my mantle of Islamic librarianship. Similarly, Lancaster, the man who started the idea of paperless librarianship. Lancaster help me out in my bibliometric studies and in terms of quantitative studies. These are the great people in different fields, in the different sectors that I have been depending on, and they have helped me without knowing me who I am. So my story is all about who I am because of my leaders, because of the giants on whose shoulders I stand. This is all about myself. Thank you. About the book that we have in hand, there is one simple and straightforward common ground. And that common ground is users. Because archives have their own purpose and identity. Libraries have their own purpose and their own identity. Museums have their own purpose and their own identity. But what brings together in this book is the users as a common denominator. And this is the first book that's brought out on libraries, archives, museums in terms of social justice and civic engagement. Let me tell you the background of this need for a book. I surveyed 15 books published on libraries, archives, museums, 15, 1-5. And that is included in the book. The tabulated data of what I found is in the book. Of those 15 books, they talk about the history, they talk about the politics, they talk about convergence, collaboration, they talk about everything, but there is, I won't say there is missing, but there is not much of focus on civic justice, social justice and civic engagement. That's the reason I had this book. And when I was doing further research, I found United Nations has a goal for 2030, Sustainable Development Goal, Developmental Goal, SDG 2030. I did search on the communities and the libraries and the organizations that are working for development across the globe. And I've picked up 15 different projects and I found that only one project has a librarian as a person involved in one of those projects. Otherwise, 15 of those projects are listed in the book. Of those 15, none of them associates the library, archives, museums as a stakeholder, as a partner, or as a collaborator. So that is one gap that has been identified in this book, that the community work is going on in the libraries, in the archives and museums. ALA has its work on 2030 of the United Nations goals. ALA does it, museums do it, archives do it. They do it from their own perspective, from their own contributions. I'm not denying that there is a total gap. I'm saying there is a gap in terms of more coordination, more collaboration. I'll come to this a little later. Now, thinking of digital divide, there are different people who look at this in a three different contexts that I could conclude and summarize. Number one is the technical digital divide. Technical maybe because I have a laptop, I have a phone, I have a iPad, but I do not know what happens when I'm switching on from one to another. I do not know how to connect to a PowerPoint from one to another. So many things are there, which is the part of the technical reason for digital divide. The second aspect is the social. Social, I'm excluding economic from this. I'll come back to that in a second. Social is because, for example, third world countries are far advanced in terms of people using a handheld device, a phone for their farming, a phone for their delivery, a phone for everything they use, and they're cheap, they're damn cheap. 10 times the cost that I pay in Canada for a particular service. They pay 1/10 of that or 1/5 of that amount. So they have a cheaper technical access. But then the society is on the other side, which I'm going to the third main characteristic of this digital divide. The third is about the life skills. The Western world is advanced and they train people to use the technology. The Eastern world, which is the other side of the world, has technology, has advancement, has people who are working on different areas of technology. But what happens to the life skills is when you think of COVID as one of the main issue, it brought us to a main idea of false news, fake news, cooked up stories of COVID. And there was a big gap between even learned people, even people who could use internet and they were thinking they are the champions. They couldn't make out the difference between a fake or a different alternative approach to COVID story as against what WHO said or as against what the other public health officials said. So these are the three dimensions that I could classify with them for a taxonomy purpose, to say that it is a technological issue, social issue, and then the capability of the individuals as a third component. Why I'm excluding economic is most of the people in this area think that economic development of the net or the technology is focused by governments, is the focus of the business, is the focus of the corporates. And so what they have excluded is the social concepts, social aspects. They have focused more on economic development, and in that sense, IT and the technology get boost, and they are not focused on sociological or social and cultural issues. So the digital divide is more obvious in social rather than economic ways. I'll just take 1 minute from this e-readiness, electronic readiness. If you see this small caption on the right side, the Pew survey says one survey respondent said, I'm fed up with the self-touch, self-checkout system. I need people. My question is this the self-checkout, is this a divider or a bridge for the digital divide? If it is a divider, then we have to think of alternative where people will get satisfaction coming to the library, talking to people, getting checked out through people rather than through machines. On the left side, I have a survey results button. I didn't really report my survey. I did about 2 major surveys throughout the globe during the COVID. I started in February and ended in March or April, and I could gather enough data to know the digital readiness of what librarians, archivists, museologists, and community in general thinks about it. The results of the survey are in the book, in the appendix, and you can read it from there. This part is free. You can look at the appendix. The results of the survey are free, and you don't have to buy the book to read that part. 2 more sections are free and open. You can read the introduction. You can read the preface. There are 2 appendices. One is the survey results. The other is a resource directory for people who are interested in finding of research on COVID and libraries, archives, museums. COVID, research on collaboration, how libraries, museums, archives collaborate with schools, colleges, public community facilities, etc., etc. So this book, for this particular release period, has got a 50% discount, and the code is IGI50. So if you apply or request the publisher for this book with this order number, with this code number, you can get a 50% discount for this book. It would be good if you pass this information to your librarians, to your museologists or archivists, and people who can order books and add this in your reference collection. Coming to digital divide, there are trends to improve it and bring empathy in digital resources. The definition of digital empathy here is, digital empathy is about humanizing the interactions we offer them and demonstrating that we understand them. They want brands to demonstrate empathy. On the right side, there's a button which says Digital Equity Act 2019 suggested or recommended, but that act has not become a law, so it is simply a suggestion, or I would say a bill under consideration, to make digital equity an obligation, a right, and a kind of a responsibility for people in the organizations. In practice, how would you do that? What is empathy doing for libraries, for archivists, for museums? Think of the first bullet, which says browsing a mile in your patron's shoes. You have heard of walking a mile, but here the quotation I got from a book or a journal is browsing a mile in your patron's shoes. That is for your development to think of empathy and how and what it means. The second option, second exercise, or the exercise as it is called, is work like a patron day. Go into their footsteps, go into their ideas, go into their senses, go into their kind of compassion and empathic attitude and see how a patron feels like. Let me give you a hint on this. I went to a public library last week. I wanted to know where is this section of digital, printed Urdu magazines. And the librarian at the desk said, it's there, right there on the back end of the shelf. So right back at the end of the shelf, I checked for 15 racks. And in those 15 racks or 15 rows of bookshelves, there was none of that I was looking for. And I came back and saw this person busy, so I ignored for a minute. And then the next person came. That person worked with me to the shelf and showed this is the area that the printed book is that I'm interested in. This is what is work like a patron day. If you are able to work like a patron in the library or in the museum or in an archive, you understand what the difficulty or what the hassles or what the barriers are in access to the information. The third exercise is planning you go live where the user lives. This is probably the most difficult part because we can live in our own office, in our own comfort zone and say, okay, sir, please come in. Okay, madam, please come in. Okay, please come in, come in. We are having open doors. We are having information session. We are having a literacy session. This is good inside. This is the in-reach. How about the outreach? The library outreach, my museum outreach, archival outreach is there, definitely is there. I'm not denying it, but it needs more focus. It needs more empathy and it needs more equity to reach the marginalized, to reach the people who are isolated and people who are not able to reach the library. I'm coming to those not able to reach in a second. Supposing you have an empathy curriculum, there you can include the marginalized, there you can include the minoritized, there you can include the people who are underprivileged, and there you can include the people who are not served at all. For example, in a big major world's one of the biggest public libraries, 40% of its city is registered members. 60% are not, which means they are not served at all. So who will serve them? Mr. Google will do that. Or Mr. Someone else tomorrow will come up as a competitor and they will do that. So our outreach is less and it has to be expanded. That is what is my bottom line. This is where I connect with equity of access, equity of usage, equity of inclusion, equity of space in terms of reaching out all those who have not been reached or reached with a not at a good speed, at a good pace. That's what I'm trying to focus on to bridge the digital divide. This is the slide that I want to suggest for researchers to think about. Ranganathan, the professor, the master of librarianship, Dr. S.R. Ranganathan, he suggested 5 laws for practice. The first law is books are for use. The second is every book its reader. The third is every reader its book. The fourth law, save the time of the reader, is what I picked up for this research proposal because I found a similar quote by archivists, and that is Dr. David Horn. He says, archivists save the time of the researchers. Someone in the museum, I don't know the name of the person who wrote this, says save the time of the seeker or community. And some other source has it, learn cool things and save time with the library workshops. My humble suggestion is I want to rephrase it as lamps save the time of the user. And my chapter 2 has many more helpful methods to improve the reference, to improve the resource, to improve the outreach, to improve the connections with the society that are required. My suggestion again is prioritize whichever is most major barrier or needs attention to the building of bridges. And I come to the end of my slide.
First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Muhammad Tahir for his tireless efforts to, first of all, to put this book together and connecting with, one day I was talking with him and asking that how much work you are doing actually. And he said, you can't tell them in numbers. It's so many hours, more than 24 hours in a day. contacting many people and getting everything together. So thank you for this and bringing so many brilliant minds from the LAM sector together. And then on top of that, even after publication, arranging these webinar series where you're trying to bring enthusiastic LAM community together to share our thoughts, concerns, and ideas in the time of digital divide crisis. For today webinar, our agenda would be, I'll have a little introduction about myself. I'm one of the author for a chapter in this book with my colleague here, Professor Lesley Gardner. And then we will, then I will pass it on to Tahir Saab, so he can continue this. Today we have a guest speaker, Mr. Osama Manzar. He is from Digital Empowerment Foundation, India. And his foundation has created a lot of impact in providing help to many people in India, I think more than 25 million people, to empower them digitally. Then our keynote speaker, Professor Lesley Gardner, who is Associate Professor in Department of Information Systems at University of Auckland, New Zealand. Although her work is an area of information system, but she has a lot of interest, and a lot of her co-authors, students, they are working in the field of library sector, including myself and a few of her other students. And mainly her interest lies with communities and education, digital divide, digital centenary, what she like to call, and she has more than 120 publications in different reputed conferences, journals, and book chapters. Right, then we have chair for this session today, Dr. Abdul Hamid Thiani from Ansar Foundation, Toronto. And a few panelists, Mr. Tahir will introduce more about them. Now, a little bit about myself. I'm Saima Kutab. I work as a librarian in different countries in Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and New Zealand, a different type of libraries. And currently, I'm a PhD student in information systems in University of Auckland, New Zealand. When I was working with libraries, mainly I work with information literacy programs. I was always very close to the users who are having struggle in different aspects of information literacy. I get a chance to work with research students, with academic faculty, non-academic faculty, with children, and with special experts who are working on very specific field. So I get a flavor of working with all different people and have the idea of how they perceive information literacy problem and challenges. For me, empathy and equity always was around my users community. I always feel that some people, they are struggling with information needs, or currently with a lot of digital impact, they were struggling with digital challenges themselves to how to find the information, how to do very small tasks online, but they were shy to ask. They were not very confident that they were not digitally confident, and they were not socially confident to ask for help. I always feel that, and I somehow try to identify those people among the crowd, either they were my library users or my students, and I try to reach out to them, to put them in a comfort zone, and so they will open up and able to share their problems with me. So for me, empathy and equity in the digital divide age is reaching out to the people who feel less confident about their digital skills, yet they need a lot of things to be done digitally. They need those skills, but they don't feel confident enough.
Very much. Good morning from the Thursday morning in India, early morning. I am unfortunately not a professor, and I'm quite intimidated among the group of doctors and professors and all the highly literate and educated people here. But thank you, Dr. Tahir, to invite me to speak in this one. I will just give a little bit of background. Dr. Tahir had asked me to speak for 5 minutes. I had asked him to give 7 or 8 minutes. I run an organization called Digital Empowerment Foundation for 2 decades. And incidentally, the subtitle of Digital Empowerment Foundation says empowering people at the edge of information. About 20 years back, when digital was just coming up, we had started this organization thinking that digital is going to be the future, and digital is going to be the future infrastructure for accessing information. We clearly have several layers of digital divide for sure, while lack of digital connectivity for millions and millions of people. So what I was actually saying is that while the whole world was going to become digital infrastructurally to access information, to disseminate information, we always wanted to work for the community who do not have access to information preferentially. And if you really go, I would not talk for the whole world, but we all know that even after almost 3 decades of internet and digital connectivity, only half the world has got connectivity, and half the world is still do not have connectivity. And more than 1 billion of that population live in India. More than 61% of Indians do not have access to internet, and more than 70% of rural India do not have access to information or access to internet from that perspective. Now, I would like to, library is a word I would say is a word that is actually coined for the people who can read, write, access information in a format which can bring to a place of repository of information in a format that you have to be literate of. If you really look at several millions of population and the huge number of population, they are orally literate, they are not written literate. And when you say orally literate, you may have only access through oral means of communication, oral means of consumption of information, oral means of dissemination of information. And that actually brought, if you really think of India or the diaspora like India or the population like India, if you divide the world into 4 screens, the first screen as a cinema screen, the second screen as TV screen, the third screen as personal computer, and the 4th screen as mobile, the 4th screen is actually one who has brought closest to access information for the masses, which is what we are going. And if you really look at India, and most of the Indian population, we have bypassed the 3rd screen. We have no idea that PC revolution or the desktop revolution had ever come. We directly reached to the mobile screen. And having said that, even that mobile screen is only accessible to 400 million people and not 1.4 billion people in India. So you can imagine the restrictive access to information, and library or the access to information in a format of library is an extremely small part of that entire thing. If you go to the libraries in India, if you go to all the public access points of accessing information in India, they're empty. Nobody goes there. We all know nobody goes there. That doesn't mean they don't access information, but also because we haven't transformed our public access points into a current generation of modus operandi of accessing information. And I would like to bring in some of the examples that we are not trying to solve this access to information through library, but certainly we have found few innovations in the last couple of decades. For example, one of the work that Digital Empowerment Foundation does is access to information through digital connectivity. Now we ensure wherever we go that we must provide broadband connectivity. And there is a public space called Community Information Resource Center. We call it Community Information Resource Center, and it is a digitally enabled Community Information Resource Center. So far, we have reached about 1,000 locations. In the next couple of months, it will become 1,500 locations. And there are 2-3 things we learned. And that is where this empathy and equity comes. I will give you one example from Jharkhand. Jharkhand is a state which is divided out of Bihar, if you know Indian, demography. And it is an eastern part of the country. And it is, incidentally, there is a place called Ranchi there. I belong to that place, and I was traveling to one of the remote areas in tribal areas where we were working with some women. And I was talking to them. And one of the girls came up and she said that, you know what, I have been married for 5 years. My husband has got smartphone. When your program came to us, I asked him that, can you give me your smartphone, because I'm going through a training of digital entrepreneurship. And I took the phone from him and started fiddling with it. And I had no idea how powerful it was. And after that, I have not given back this phone to him. I told him that I can break my relationship, I can break my marriage, but I won't give you this phone, because I know the power of this phone now. All these buttons are so powerful. I can click this one and I can talk to anyone. I can click this and can send information to anyone. I can click this and I can sell my product. I can click this. I mean, she just didn't know from that day. Now, when she was explaining this, the patriarchy came into the picture, the empathy came into the picture, the equity came into the picture, the opportunity came into the picture, the power of information came into the picture, the power of gender equity came into the picture, and so on and so forth. And we felt so nice about giving most of these access to women preferably, that we were solving indirectly a sense of equity and also a patriarchy. And if you search my name in India with full name and Mint is a newspaper, you will find that I have written many articles that mobile is the anti-patriarchal tool in the hands of women, especially those kind of countries which is extremely patriarchal and where equitability between the men and women is actually challenging. And that's one example. The second example, it's called Going Online as Leaders. It's a program that we launched about 3 years back. What did we do? Let's say we took Saima from somewhere and we asked her, would you like to be a mentor for 5 tribal girls in India? And she said, yes, I will be happy to talk to them on weekend. And the program actually is about talking to a woman leader by these 4 or 5 tribal girls on a video call on weekend without any agenda. And they started calling, and we just first chose 25 girls and 5 women from the cities and the urban areas. And within 6 months, we found that those girls were flying like birds. You know, they had aspiration, they had a goal, they had an objective in life, which was always there, but nobody knew, nobody was talking to them. Just because they started talking on video call with someone that they can very freely talk, they became suddenly a repository of knowledge of information, in terms of exercising their talent. And that program is now Government of India's Ministry of Tribal Affairs have adopted as a national program, Going Online as Leaders. And the 5,000 of tribal girls are talking to the mentors all over the world and the country. And they are without additional cost talking to each other and all that. The third experiment we realized that most of these places where we were opening community information resource centers, when we were putting curriculum to understand and learn digital literacy, not many people were doing. But when we were leaving the computers or the PC or the mobile or the tablets, their learning was very fast because they were peer learning. One person is putting the hand on the keyboard, the other one is saying, this screen, can you click this one? Then somebody is saying, no, click this one. Then somebody is coming and clicking 4 later, some keyboard and 4 later, and suddenly YouTube opened, and then your favorite cinema star is there, and you started consumed in that information because that's your favorite information. And then you realize that the whole curriculum that you had actually executed fell flat on everything. People were learning much faster with each other. They were accessing information much faster with talking to each other and learning from each other and so on and so forth. So we realized that why don't we adopt the formula of makerspace? Makerspace, which actually allows you to play with the tools on your own terms, with your own liberty, with your own freedom, and access information and actually create information and create all kind of information. And that actually has helped us a lot by creating all this community information resource center into a maker space kind of phenomena, where you go for innovation, where you go for experiments, where you go for access to information of your choice. You go and create information and disseminate information and actually become part of these, what you call as the information society, in a participative way, not just as a consumer of information, but also as a producer of information. That's very, very important. That's another aspect of this equitability that we keep talking about. Are you a consumer of information? Of course, the whole capitalist world and whole, tech ed world or ed tech world would like you to be the consumer of information primarily. And that's the reason why Facebook is also started working on connectivity. There's no reason why they would be working on connectivity when they are a content platform. But everybody wants you to be a consumer. But how are you creating a society of producer of information rather than just a consumer of information? Those were some of the examples that I wanted to share. And the last point that I want to share is that in the middle of digital divide, empathy and equity, there lies this whole oral society. This, incidentally, oral society is not considered to be literate and educated by the people who are certified, who are qualified, who are educated. And if you really look at the wisdom of the world, if you really look at the art and culture and heritage of the world and the folk of the world and the tradition of the world, they lie in oral societies, oral communication, unfortunately. And the attitude with this approach of how do we include with empathy the entire oral community and the oral society with the help of media and information literacy, can we bring in this digital inclusion in such a way that whole oral society come on board without really, missing the part of being called illiterate or uneducated on the basis of written literacy or on the basis of alphabets or on the basis of script or on the basis of the medium rather than on the basis of the depth of information and knowledge. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I wanted to bring this perspective from this part of the world, and hopefully that would have added value to this discourse. Thank you very much.
That was a very, very interesting talk from you, Osama Mazhar. I'd like to share my experience as an academic, and I'm not owning up to how long I've been an academic because that wouldn't be very fair. Years ago, when I chose to become an information systems academic, my parents said, "Why are you doing that? That's not a profession for a woman." And at that point, I was so rebellious, I said, well, I'm doing it anyway. And I have a love of technology. I have the patience of a saint. And therefore, I went down that technology route. In my first job, I actually had the role of teaching high school teachers how to use computers. Yeah, I know, we're going back a long way here. And these, mostly women, came in and they literally would shake in front of the machine because they were terrified of trying to do something that they'd never done before. So that led me into looking at quite a lot of issues around gender. And so one of the areas around digital divide actually looks at how society values the way in which we use technology, what it wants us to achieve by looking at technology, but also what the different genders should be doing. Now, roll forward a number of years, and we're still finding this. We're finding that the different genders look at different uses of technology from very different perspectives. Males tend to look at this from the perspective of, oh, let me play with it. Let me see how I can break it. And I tend to look at it from that perspective as well. But to a large degree, women have to be persuaded that the use of their time is going to be recompensed by what they're going to get out of the phone. So 5 years ago, maybe 7, if you said to somebody, "Where's your mobile phone? I sent you a text," they'll say, "I haven't got time for that. You know, I've got the kids to look after. I've got a full-time job. I've got all this other stuff going on. I can't do it. I'm not going to do it. It's not worth my time." As soon as YouTube and text messages and video calling and having fun on the mobile device became mainstream, it's something that everybody aspires to actually have a smartphone. But then that leads us to another digital divide in terms of perceptions. So my perception is that I must always have my mobile phone with me. And in fact, the other day I left it at home by mistake and I nearly turned the car around to go and get it. And anyway, that's a totally another story. But it's something that we have become so attached to as individuals. But what about people who have disabilities, who can't read a screen, who can't hear or see what's actually happening? How do we actually involve these people and actually make sure that they are enabled to participate in the digital world? How do we also look at people who have been digitally displaced? So in this nasty pandemic that we've had an awful lot of people who've lost their jobs. And so we at the University of Auckland are pairing with a number of training providers within the Auckland region to see if we can actually encourage people who have had no need to use any form of telephone or computer to actually gain those skills so that they can re-enter the workforce. The other group that are mainly affected here are the elderly. People often say, the elderly, "Oh, there's not much point in teaching old people how to use computers. You know, they won't understand it," and all of those things. Similarly, they also say, "Oh, well, you know, if you don't know how to use something, you should go and find the nearest 5-year-old. They'll tell you how to do it." There are lovely programs running in New Zealand called Appy Campers, which is basically looking at seniors and actually getting seniors and showing them how to use apps that are going to enhance their well-being and their livelihood. So learning how to use YouTube, learning how to use Google, and also learning how to use all the banking applications becomes so important. Now, asking a 5-year-old to do things, well, they'll probably figure it out in the end. But here's a note to be parting with, and something that really concerns me about digital literacy is that when our students are coming into the university now, they are less computer literate than when they used to join us 25 years ago. And with that, I think I've overstepped my 5 minutes, so I'll leave you to it.
Depending where you are, a very good morning on a Thursday to all those in the Eastern Hemisphere, and a good evening on a beautiful, snowy, chilly, feeling like minus 25 degrees on a Wednesday here in Toronto. Let me start by thanking Dr. Mohammed Tahir for inviting me to be the moderator of the panel discussion at this international webinar. I really feel honored to be amongst scholars, researchers, executives, and community organizers. I'm really amazed with the work, Osama Manzar, that you are doing, and many of you are doing in regards to social justice. So I certainly would like to connect with you, Osama, to explore what we could do here in Canada. I think this webinar is a good sort of a place where we can it has given us an opportunity to network as well. So this webinar, as a follow-up from the launch of the book Role of Libraries, Archives, and Museums in Achieving Civic Engagement and Social Justice in Smart Cities. This book is unique in the sense that it goes beyond looking at libraries, museums, and archives. It touches on issues that are timely in the midst of our changing world. Issues that highlight that many overt and covert injustices that continue to take place in various forms in our societies. As I've mentioned, here in Canada and the US, it is time for dinner on a Wednesday evening. While it is time for breakfast in Australia, India, New Zealand, Singapore, Malaysia, and countries in the East. Thanks to the advancement of technology, we are sort of sitting together here around a table at the same time, all of us, reflective of people in a village coming together for a discussion, just like they do in a jirga or a boma. A boma is a meeting place in East Africa. We have become a global village, and so to think and act as such. I would like us for a moment to imagine this village, this global village that we exist in. And as we sit together in our enclosed rooms, outside is the rest of our village. Our village comprises of medium-sized houses, big homes, small huts, tall skyscrapers, but also shacks and slums spread all over, some of them in our backyard. I would like, therefore, to pose this question. Is this the type of village we want to have and live in? Can we not empathize and care about our neighbor, both during normal times or in crises such as COVID-19? Digital inequality in virtual and remote telehealth tells us how difficult it is to connect with a doctor or a healthcare provider. COVID-19 has exposed both the health and digital inequalities, both locally as well as internationally. The similitude of people facing social injustice described in the village exists in different forms and various degrees all around us. Such situations have consequences for all. If not now, then in the future. And so, can we not ensure that everyone has equitable opportunities and access to the resources and opportunities that exist? And us, as academicians, people who are involved in organizations, community-based organizations, what strategies will we adopt and what practical steps will we take to alleviate the inequalities that exist in our community? The other point that I want to mention is in regards to technology. Is technology neutral or unbiased? Are all the stakeholders neutral and unbiased? Do all stakeholders have opportunities that are equitable? I am glad that there is much discourse about these social justice issues at various levels, be it academia, government, businesses, or the community. The libraries, archives, and museums, with their vaults of knowledge, location in the neighborhoods, and access to the public, are in a really good position to be able to offer and address issues of community and civic engagement, inclusion, and equity. So I really would like to hear from our panelists and to continue this discourse in the global village of ours and to explore both sides of the coin. We have a panel of very learned and experienced experts. We will try and touch on the lambs, the digital world, and the communities we work with. So let me start with Dr. Manohar Pawar. Dr. Manohar, who is a professor at the School of Social Work and Arts, Charles Sturt University, Australia. He is the president of the ICSD, socialdevelopment.net. You can check him out, and is the founding editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Community and Social Development, published by SAGE. He has authored over 160 publications, including 20 books and monographs. Wow, Dr. Manohar, how did you manage to write so many books? Where did you find all the time? But it's a pleasure to have you with us today. And so, please, the floor is yours, and I'll give you the first opportunity to able to share your thoughts on what we've talked about so far.
Thank you, Dr. Abdul Hamid, for your kind and generous introduction. Before I make a few remarks, I would like to thank Dr. Mohammad Taher for inviting me to be part of this distinguished panel and speakers. I also would like to thank Sayama for coordinating this event, and very inspiring speech by Osama and Leslie, and of course, Dr. Muhammad's presentation about the whole theme. And Dr. Abdul Hamid, you have raised important issues in your presentation. The issue of libraries, archives, and museums, thinking this topic and these organizations or institutions from social justice, equity, or empathy, this point of view or this thought is relatively new in the library science field. So the title of the book, the 22 contributors, its leader, the editor, I would like to congratulate them to bring this issue to life, because the libraries and archives, museums are such a rich resource, but they are always they are behind the scene. They are not in the limelight. They are often hidden. But this book, these scholars who have engaged in writing and presenting their thoughts and sharing with the world, that itself is a great contribution. Because I just want to make, though one can speak long, but I just wanted to make 3 points in my presentation. Number one is these libraries, archives, and museums, they are created by using the public money. It is the taxpayers' money. And everybody pays to the government, and most of the time government invests in them, except there may be some private libraries and museums. Now, it is very legitimate that this public resource is equitably and equally shared with everybody. But that has not been the case, because they have remained as a white elephant, and only those who can go there or those who have ability to use it, they are able to use it. Otherwise, they are a rich resource, but they are underutilized resource. So here is an ethical question that when we create resourceful organizations with public taxpayers' money, are we equally, equitably sharing that resource for the community benefit, for the advancement and development of the community? So that is one issue I want to raise. And the issue of this empathy and engagement and social justice legitimately flows from that, because this is a public resource and this needs to be publicly shared and utilized and developed. But the second point I want to make is that we have the rich resource on the one side, and we have the huge population globally not having access to it. And it is not only in the field of library, generally in every field, that we know the remedy, we have the resources, but we know who need it, but there are barriers, there are walls which needs to be broken. And maybe this digital technology may be one means, and policymakers and the library workers, their willingness to implement certain strategies so that this barrier can be taken out and this rich resource can be made available to people where they need it most. For this, I will give an example. In 2019, we held a conference in Islamic University in Kustia in Bangladesh. And they had started a Bachelor of Social Work program, which is a new program, just 2-3 years. They had 2 or 3 staff members teaching it. And though it is difficult to reach that place, from Dhaka, it takes 5-6 hours. But when I was there, I asked one of the organizers that, can you take me to your library? I would like to see what kind of books are available for students to read and study this social work. And he was kind enough to take me. A few of us visited there. And to my surprise, I did not find a single book, one book on social work in that library where they are running a social work program. Now, this is just an example. There may be many scenarios like this, but in our various libraries all over the world, these books are there, both digital and hard copies. Now, how can we make these resources accessible to people and students and teachers where they are needed most, so that they can study, they can learn, and they can develop skills? And it is just a kind of hurdle that we have not done it. And with this digital technology, we should be able to do it. So that is the second point I want to make. The third point which appeals from this book is that, as Dr. Mohammad Taher mentioned in the summary as well as in his speech, these great institutions have to be, these institutions should not be the elite institutions. They have to be community-led, community-decided, and community-oriented. So the ordinary people needs to participate, make a decision, and use them. So the community orientation, bringing these rich resources to the community, people-oriented libraries, people-oriented archives, people-oriented museums, I think that is very important.
I think he is
yeah, he's outside the meeting, so maybe disconnected. So while he come back,
hopefully we should
Shujata to, she had some comments at the start, so she might like to share. And another thing before that, I would like to share that Professor Lisley has another meeting just in 10 minutes, and she need to rush for that.
I'm sorry, I'm also a dean of the faculty, so I've got a few other bits and bobs to do.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lisley, for joining us and sharing your insights. Just to mention, you just mentioned about digital literacy for seniors. Here, I'm part of an organization, Ansar Foundation, And we have digital literacy programs where we teach seniors how to use a tablet. And then after they graduate from 3, 4, 5 classes, once they are comfortable using it, we actually give them that tablet as a gift for them to start using it. So that type of work, similar work that you have you just mentioned. So I just didn't want that to be missed out before you left. But thank you so much for your insight today, and we really appreciate your input today.
Well, thank you for that. And one of the good things is actually continuous access to the technology. And that's a lot of the reasons why a lot of seniors actually say, well, I did the courses and it was fun. I met some new friends, but I haven't remembered anything because I haven't got the device in my hand all the time. And so that's a really good thing. I wish we did it here. So, on that note, I shall take that to the next meeting that I go to. But I'm going to have to say farewell now, and it's been so wonderful to see you all and really interested in the projects going on around the world.
Thank you, Professor Leslie. Thanks a lot for coming and blessing
I shall leave you now. So you take care. Bye now.
Thank you. Thank you, Leslie. Now over to Sujata.
Thank you to the committee, Dr. Tahi and Dr. Abdul Ahmed. My name is Sujata Tharakamala. I work with Fairfield City Open Libraries in Sydney. Our local community is, 70% of them are born overseas with, first language being not English. So quite a challenge for our library. And I just want to touch on the presenters and then respond to some of the presentations which I made instead of talking about my library a lot. What I'm going to do is actually I'm going to relate what we do in our library. Coming from Dr. Tahi, what he said, on those 3 aspects of technology, life skills, capability, culture, and social and e-readers. Yes, technology is a challenge, especially when it is a multicultural, community makeup, and they need all the help. What we do in our library is we run, as Dr. Abdullah Ahmed had said, that, we run the tech savvy programs where the senior citizens actually get to go through those classes, the initial classes and the advanced classes. What happens is they come with the same age group. So they have the strength to share with each other and the strength to open up and learn, be able to ask the questions, get clarifications. So that's a fantastic program which we run. I know it's a challenge, culturally it's a challenge to get them on board to come and attend the classes, but once they are there, they take active part in the classes. E-readers, yes, it's a challenge for the e-readers. And then the community, there is a digital divide. Not everyone can afford the e-readers, and also what the library does is we have a lending facility for the customers to actually borrow the e-readers. And we librarians help them to download some of the facilities which are available in the library in terms of ebooks and the audio books, which they can download and take it home. Once they download it, they don't even need the internet Wi-Fi facilities at home to be able to listen to. So those sort of initiatives we have got in our library. In terms of Dr. Tahi talking about, visiting the libraries and where, being in the customer's shoe, thinking from the customer's point of view, how we understand their need. We have in our library, we don't have any reference desks. We have the staff walking around the building. We are roving librarians. We get the customers at the point of need and help them out. So we capture all the need of the customers generally when we walk around.
This is great, Sujata. Do you have anything to add? Because I can see Dr. Power, he has joined us again.
Okay, if you would like him to continue, then I'll stop here. I've got a few things to add, but I don't mind stopping here because it's important to listen to Dr. Power now.
Yeah, and I have a question for you as well that would add to the discussion.
Yes.
Dr. Power, you know, you brought up some very interesting points regarding ethics, regarding usage of the services. I mean, my own example, my own experience has been, while I was at the university doing my research and my studies and doing my program, I was able to access everything that was available through the universities. Now, I'm no longer with the university. I'm at the with the community-based organization, working with them, doing research, but I don't have access to that. That same pool of knowledge that used to exist, that was available to me previously. So as somebody, and I just want to pose this question to you, Dr. Power, you know, I see that there's a gap that exists amongst libraries, archives, and museums, as well as with the various sectors in the community, whether it is government sector, whether it's community-based agencies. We all work in silos, or it appears that we are working in silos. And so based on your example, based on your experience, you know, can we not build bridges of empathy and equity? And how do we do that? How do we bring these, you know, big silos to start working together?
That's a very good question. And yeah, sorry that my internet disappeared, and again I had to come back. I have made all the points I wanted to make, so it dropped at the right time. So I do not want to add anything more. And Sujata, sorry that your presentation was interrupted.
Not at all.
I think in terms of barriers, and like you gave a good example that you had access to all the resources when you were a student. Now, as a community member, you do not have access to the same resources, and there may be other libraries, not only those university libraries. And this is somewhere, this is what I was trying to think about. There is a wall in between where there are people who need those resources, and the resources exist, and there is something artificial barrier which stops us from existing. And this, like how we are meeting now, we should be able to access the needed resources through the digital means wherever we are. And the libraries having invested so much of resources, the more people they make use of it, more returns for them. No, not necessarily in terms of money, but that is their purpose. The whole creating museums, archives, library is to help people use them. And the more people use, more the returns they have. So I think we need to create this policy agenda that how can we help. And here we are talking about all well-informed people like you and I, but we think about the ordinary people, that if they want to access something, how can they have access to these resources where they have, as citizens, their resources are invested in them?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Power. I agree with you. You know, I mean, there's lots of resources, but you know, those resources need to be shared, and you know, people need to have access to them. Coming back to Sujata, I'm sorry I had to cut you off because I wanted Dr. Power to continue with his thoughts.
Not at all. Yeah.
And I would like you to finish your thoughts, but I have a question for you as well. You know, yes. Based on where you are, how much, and you know, since you're working with the libraries, how much and what types of civic and community engagement takes place in the libraries in the country that you are in?
I'm in Sydney, Australia, and I'm really proud to say that we, as a library, we have got a lot of interaction with the communities. You know, we run courses. We are very aware of the digital divide. We run courses. As I said, we do the tech savvy services for the senior citizens. We have got English conversation groups going on, which the library facilitates. with the, for the immigrants, new immigrants, they need to get command over the language to be able to understand, to be able to go about their daily needs. And then so we conduct classes for them to have a conversation skills. And we have got tech help within the library. What we have got is we have got different programs, like we have got PC Smart, where a customer can actually book themselves time to be able to do. There's a lot of information which is available from the government, and some of the areas they need to do those things online, filling up the forms, applying for things, getting about their life. This is where we, the librarians, we come and play our roles. They can book us for an hour and we can take them through the forms. Because of the language barrier, they need some help to understand what is needed to be done. We sit with them, we help them out. We've got another program which is called the Smart Bar Sessions, where we actually take the customers through all the mobile devices they have got access in terms of logging on, creating accounts, to be able to set up the chats. And at the same time, we take the time to explain to them and take them through all the resources which the library provides, online resources. So that gives them a confidence to log into those resources and get the information which they need. We do that. And we run courses like, cyber security to be safe online, because there's so much happening now, in terms of, and around this COVID time, customers had to use online resources. As Dr. Tahir said, what is correct, what is not? You just go into Google and search, you do not know what is correct information, so that's where we come in. And when the libraries were shut, we had the telephone conversation with the customers who could ring in and ask for help. So these are the things we say. Our library is doing a great job in actually bridging the gap and getting the information to the customer and helping them to be able to use the information which is made available. And just one more point, it's just so fascinating to hear to Osama Master actually about his experiences in the Indian setup. And he was talking about the oral history. What we do in our library is we record the oral history from the community. People have come up. We've got people from Vietnam, from Cambodia who have come in few years as refugees, and they've got such rich history, which we actually record and make it available for the other customers to use it. So there's so many fascinating things which we are doing. Unfortunately, there's not enough time for me to share with you guys. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sujata. I mean, what you mentioned about documenting oral history, that's amazing. What you guys are doing there. And I wish, others would, take a page from that. So I know we are running, we are already over time, and I have so many questions to ask for us to discuss. I don't know, can we continue? I don't know if we can continue at this stage, but there's a lot of things that we need to think about and talk about, how does technology play a role in all this, in community engagement, civic engagement, and the other thing is artificial intelligence that, is
it's a major one coming.
Yeah, it's coming right in front of us.
Absolutely.
So there's so much to talk about. Unfortunately, time does not allow. I really would like to thank Dr. Manohar Pawar and Sujata for your input as well.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
And the ideas and your views are very well taken. Thank you so much. And I wish we had more time for us to be able to discuss a lot of other things that are on my plate here that I wanted to talk about. With that, back to you, Saima. Thank you.
I guess we all have a lot of things to share, and these things that we can, it's not only that we want to listen, but there's a possibility that we can replicate these things in our own environments, and we always get inspirations from what is happening all over the world. So I guess with all these digital platforms, we have the opportunity to connect with each other, maybe through LinkedIn or maybe through other platforms, and then we can continue sharing. And if the possibility of I don't know, practical collaborations or research collaborations or just sharing, exchange of the ideas. So the word is actually the sky is the limit, not sure. I can't see the sky, but that's it. So I think here we will close for today. So I'll request Mr. Tahir if he would like to add anything, and we'll call the day then.
Thank you, Sama. You did the best. I couldn't have managed so many things at the same time.
Dr. Tahir, can I make a suggestion here? Since there's so much to talk about and we know the interest that everybody has shown, if somehow you can lead and take this to another level, you know, of forming a forum or something where people can come together and exchange ideas and make a difference to the communities that we live in and to the world that we live in.
Thanks. That is the idea. That is the idea that I've brought here to this point, where the previous 8 panelists, the speakers in the previous webinar, they agreed to be on a forum, and this present forum will be an extension of that. And I will start a movement internally within our own group, and that could lead the group taking it further to their own areas of museums, libraries, archives, at a national and international level. Like every association has a national body, every association has an international representation. So it could be moved from one level to the other. And I am sure with my correspondence with 5,000 organizations across the globe, and with your support is base. I cannot do anything without your support now, because the first webinar I had was in February 2021. There we had a global meeting that was to start the call for the book chapters, and that led to the initiation for me to understand that webinar is more important to engage, more important to talk, more important to be friendly and kind of communicating the idea that this project, social justice and civic engagement, is new to LAM. Libraries individually are doing it. Museums individually are doing, will do it. Archives are individually doing and will do it. But there was no collective input to bring this all together to a single platform where this can be moved forward. And so I thank you all for this kind and compassionate support for this kind of a webinar, and this kind of understanding that breeds more further understanding of the subject and human relationship for the base to develop further for empathy and equity. And with this, I think what comes to my mind, there's a book called Democracy Brings at Home. The Democracy Begins at Home. There's a book like that, which teaches us that democracy is not to be taken from the 4 walls outside the house or 4 walls outside the workplace. It has to be brought in first from the individuals, then it moves to the associations or the organizations, and then it becomes a part of the society. So the same thing is empathy. Empathy is internal. My grandmother teaches empathy. Every mother teaches empathy. But then the person who is growing up forgets that particular piece of information. They remember everything else. The grandmother's decisions, the grandmother's suggestions, the grandmother's recommendations, the grandmother's tidbits, they are all remembered. But the human context that is trained and that is inculcated misses the track, because when you go outside the home, you find you are an individual, you are individualistic, and you have your own individualism, where there is no room for the other. That is the reason the multiculturalism has become a more important factor, where you need to train people to understand the other. And this otherness is where empathy is more important for institutions and organizations to discuss about it, apply this in their own work sphere within and outside. Why I say within? Me as an immigrant in this country could not, will not find a job. I repeat, this is not my words. This is an immigrant who wrote in the Ellis Island in New York. He said, I was told that when I come to America, I'll find streets paved with gold. When he came to America, he did not see these streets paved with gold. And finally, he was told he has to pave these streets with gold. Same with me as an immigrant. I come here thinking that I'll find my job in my profession. But there is no job for me in my profession. I applied hundreds of places that I should get in. And they said there are back doors to get in. Like you need to know someone and someone will let you in. So this is not professionalism, I think. Where you need to know someone to get in. What about your skills? What about your qualification? What about your education? What about your training? What about your ability to communicate in a different country with different training kind you had and local certification that you have acquired? So social justice is good to talk about. Social justice is good to be seen outside, but it is seen inside as a lesser need. So this is in reach, what is called in literature as in reach. In reach is less, outreach is more. In reach would mean satisfying the staff. In reach would mean making the staff happy. In reach would mean engaging the staff to their needs and requirements. So do all organizations have this kind of a program that they maintain and manage the equity of the hiring, equity in collections, equity in programs, equity in processes, equity in procedures, equity in planning, etc., etc., etc. If we take this, I would have found in my book places to say that libraries have an equity statement. I didn't find one. I didn't find a statement about empathy. I didn't find a statement about inclusiveness. There are general descriptions about diversity. There are general descriptions about doing this in a few websites. And there is a study done in Canada to compare 7 major websites, and they found it's hardly present, which means they are not present at all in the generic sense. Hardly present makes count, yes, but otherwise, in reality, it is almost negligible. So thank you again for giving me ideas.
Dr. Tehar, before you conclude, may I offer that if any of your colleagues are interested in reviewing your book, I'm happy to publish the book review in the journal I edit. So that is one offer. So you can organize the reviewer. The second one is as the president of the International Consortium for Social Development, which is a global organization, if there is an interest, I'm happy to explore whether you would like to use that platform to discuss the social justice issues related to libraries, museums, and archives. So that is another platform. As a president, I can offer that. Yeah, thank you.
In fact, I sent a request to 100 journals, which are professional journals in libraries, in museums and archives. And I'm getting good response from them that they need reviewers to review this book. And so that channel is already open, and I'm discussing with editors, with book review publishers, and with our publisher to send them copies. Maybe most of the time they send electronic copies, not the physical copy, based on the mailing errors, the issues. Like it takes months now to deliver from one country to the other. So they do it instantly with an electronic copy for book reviews. And that's what is the current trend, I suppose. Thank you. Anyway, thank you, everyone. Thank you for this good evening from us. Good morning to you all again. Good afternoon to wherever you are. And rest of the peace, rest of the stay in happy, healthy, safe situations. Thank you. Wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Suitable for use in your course syllabus and as an integral resource for research advancements within your department, This publication should be included within your institution's library along with these related publications.
Offered in print, ebook, and print plus ebook, and as a part of IGI Global's ebook collection, this publication is available through IGI Global's online bookstore, as well as many other major booksellers and platforms, including EBSCOhost, Gobi, ProQuest, and Oasis. Purchase or recommend this title to your library today.